Let's talk about 10 tiny habits or changes you can make to start activating your feminine energy. These little micro habits have made such a difference in my life personally, but they're probably gonna help you too. Hey friends, welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Jillz and I help women step into their power, tap into their divine feminine, and become their best self. So if that's something you want to do, you should subscribe and stick around. The first micro habit is probably my favorite, and it's actually all in the way you walk. And my goodness, just this tiny little change has helped me feel so much more embodied in my feminine energy. And that is actually swinging your hips when you walk. Okay, so when you walk, when a woman is more in her masculine energy, you can usually tell by the way that she walks. She's a lot more stiff in her body. There's not much movement there. But the feminine is all about flow and movement and also sensuality. And a lot of that divine feminine energy is actually stored in the hips. So when you walk, actually allow your hips to flow and swing, allow your hips and your body to soften, allow your body to move, allow it to be fluid. You will see, trust me, you will see, if you go out somewhere and walk with more of that hip movement, you will feel so much more confident and so much more embodied in your feminine energy. It's like night and day, I guarantee it. And I'm someone I naturally have more of an athletic build. I have pretty broad shoulders. It kind of takes a lot of effort for me to soften my body and kind of let my hips swing and do all of that. But when I do, trust me, you will notice an improvement in how you feel. So after this video, sometime later today or tomorrow if it's too late already, I want you to put on some headphones, play your favorite playlist, and go for a walk in your neighborhood. But when you go on this walk, you are going to 100% focus on moving your hips, letting your hips swing. You're gonna try to strut a little bit through your neighborhood, kind of like in a runway show, but maybe not quite that intense. And then just notice, see how it completely shifts your energy. Now, moving on to the next micro habit. I've talked a lot on this channel about the power of dressing up and looking your best and how it makes you feel your best. But I also want to mention the power of what I call a micro dress up. What I mean by this is dressing up, doing your hair, doing a full face of makeup, giving yourself a blowout, all of that stuff. That stuff is great and it's most likely gonna help you feel more feminine. But that's not a micro habit. This takes time. But people underestimate the micro dress up, AKA how much better you can feel in just 5 minutes of putting yourself together. For example, for me, just changing into a cute outfit, doing my eyebrows, because I hate when they're not filled in, and then doing my lipstick, it takes less than 5 minutes, but all of a sudden I feel better. The energy shifts. I think sometimes people think that if they don't have a full 30 minutes or an hour to get ready, they can't do their contoured face or professionally blow out their hair, then it's not worth it. It's not worth it to do anything. But I highly disagree. A micro dress up is still powerful, and just putting on a little bit of lipstick or a little bit of mascara or just very quickly touching up your hair or doing whatever it is that makes you feel good and put together, it will change the way that you feel. I'm not saying to only put in 5 minutes of effort every day. I'm just saying that 5 minutes is ginormously better than 0. And it doesn't have to be this all or nothing thing. If you can, if you have the time, get fully ready. You will feel good. You will feel great. But if you don't, a micro dress up is still beneficial. Some days are just crazy. Some days we have no time. A micro dress up is still beneficial. Maybe you're in a period of your life right now where you just really have very little time for yourself. Maybe you just had a baby 3 months ago, or you're in the middle of finals week. Even still, a little bit of mascara, some jewelry can go a really long way. Now next, so tell me if this is you, okay? You walk into a grocery store and you are looking for a very particular item and you can't seem to find it. But instead of asking for help, you decide to traipse around the entire grocery store, going through each and every aisle until finally, eventually, you find that thing that you were looking for 30 minutes later. A lot of people hate asking for help and they find it uncomfortable. And I was this way too. I was that girl who would walk into the grocery store and when I couldn't find what I was looking for, I would just continue to look and look. Even though the grocery store employee was literally right next to me and could have found it for me in 2 minutes. I was that person where I would walk into a clothing store and I knew that I was looking for a very specific top that I saw online. And the customer service girl would greet me and she would say, "Hey, do you need help finding anything?" And I would say, "No, I'm good." What? One thing that has helped me stay in my feminine energy is just becoming comfortable with quickly asking for help once I either realize I need it or that it can benefit me, and also just accepting help when it's offered. Why make things harder than they need to be? Why spend time doing something that I can easily get help for? I have this phrase that I say in my head all the time. I think, let things be easy. It gets to be easy. I literally made a mug that says it gets to be easy because this is something that is so important for me to keep in mind when I want to stay in my feminine energy. Whether it comes to big things or little things, you don't have to do everything on your own. You don't have anything to prove. Let things help and let things be easier and start getting out of your own way. So let's move on. The next tiny habit is incorporating small moments of pleasure into your life and doing things just simply because you like it, and realizing that not everything you do has to be productive to be valuable. I've talked about this before, but for example, I like to read, but for the past 7+ years, I only ever read nonfiction, books that were educational. But like 6 or 7 months ago or so, I started reading fiction again for the first time in forever. And I'll usually read for like maybe 15 to 20 minutes right before bed, but I'm not learning anything. It's not productive. It's just enjoyable. It's purely for pleasure. It's a way that I like to wind down. Not everything in your life has to be productive. Not everything in your life has to be monetized. There is so much joy and beauty found in slowing down, even in those little micro moments, just doing something that makes you happy. Knitting a scarf, reading a fiction book or a poetry book, playing an instrument for a few minutes, not because you're trying to improve and become perfect at it, but just simply because you like it. Baking, watching birds, scrapbooking, singing in the shower. Or like if you listen to a podcast on your daily walk, some days you might want that educational, deep learning type of podcast like Huberman Labs podcast. And then other days you'll want a fun podcast, something that makes you laugh, something like The Toast, because it just makes you happy. For women who are stuck in their masculine energy, there's usually a few things that they have in common. One is that they struggle to slow down, and 2 is they struggle to do things, spend time doing things that are not seen as productive. But the little micro moments of doing things just for fun, just for pleasure, learning to create tiny moments of romanticizing your life, that will start to shift your energy into a more feminine state. Masculine energy is the doing energy. It's the action energy. It creates stability, and we need that energy sometimes, yes. But feminine energy is the being energy. It's the playful energy. It's the energy that makes life sweet. When you forget about pleasure and fun, you lose your feminine energy. And sometimes all you need are tiny little moments of things that bring you joy to help bring that back. Now, as I mentioned, I'm really getting into reading fiction books again, and it's just such a good way to relax and do something just for fun. And that is why I am so excited about today's sponsor, Book of the Month. If you haven't heard of Book of the Month, they are a monthly book subscription service to help you find and read amazing books. Each month, their editorial team reads through hundreds of different books to find and curate the best selection for you to choose from, some of which are new and early releases. They also love to showcase emerging authors, which I think is pretty cool and also just helpful for finding new reads and new authors that you might not have found on your own. I just picked these 2 new books for myself. The first one is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and this is like a fantasy novel, but has one of those, like, what's it called? Rivals to lovers story, which I always love, so I'm excited to read this one. And the second book I got was This Spells Love by Kate Robb, and this one seems like a lighter read, which I personally like to read like right before bed, but this one seems a little bit witchy, and I think it's where the girl, she tries to cast a spell on her ex to try to erase him or forget him, and she wakes up in an alternate reality. So this one just seems like kind of fun and quirky, and I'm excited to read this one too. But also, Book of the Month just recently launched their curated audiobooks, which you can listen to right in their app. So now members can choose from either a hardcover book or an audiobook each month. I highly recommend you check out Book of the Month, and this is actually a really good deal for a limited time. If you join, you can get your first book for $5 if you use the code FORYOU. So I will put a link for that in the description so you can check them out. Thanks so much, Book of the Month, for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into it. So the next micro habit is creating and utilizing a second brain. If you've never heard of the term second brain, I'm going to tell you about it. So it's this concept that your brain is not for storing things, it's for creating things. And you just trying to remember and store all of these things in your head all the time, it's exhausting and it's draining. A second brain is an organized system or place to put all of these things. Usually digitally, mine is, but it doesn't have to be. And here's why this is incredibly important. The more that you have to keep track and remember everything in your head, the more that you will stay stuck in your mind. And why is this important for feminine energy? Because Feminine energy is all about getting out of your head and into your body. Utilizing a second brain throughout the day can help you get out of your head and into your body. Anything that doesn't need to be top of mind, it gets put in your second brain. It gets written down and organized for later. You just thought of something that you need to do tomorrow? Great. Write it down in your agenda immediately for tomorrow. That way, it does not have to take up any brain space at all for the rest of your day. I personally use Notion to keep track of everything. That's where I have my agenda that I'm constantly updating. That's where I have my video ideas and planning notes. And I have a whole section in my Notion called Second Brain. And it's where I store information that I know that I want to keep and that I may need, but I don't need it right now. In that section, I've got a huge restaurant list organized by neighborhood, type of cuisine, number of stars I gave it. I have recipe lists and shopping lists. It's where I have my home things that I need to keep track of. The point is that everything that doesn't have to be in here goes there. None of it ever has to be on my mind because it's there. The more that you stay stuck in your head, even with little tedious things like the fact that you need to get cucumbers from the grocery store, the harder it will be to be embodied in your feminine energy. You need to get all of that excess stuff out of your head and put it somewhere else. While sometimes the actual act of setting up whatever sort of organized system you want does take time, the actual habit of utilizing it every day is incredibly easy. Writing things down when you need to, it takes very little effort. It takes 5 seconds. Now, maybe this sounds like a lot, but honestly, the best place to start, and like 90% of what you need to do this, is 1, a really good agenda and to-do list that works for you, and 2, a good calendar. And you can expand from there over time. Like, I've been building out my second brain section in Notion for at least 8 months now, just very slowly and very casually. So don't get overwhelmed, just start with those 2 things. Get organized there. And the more that you keep up that micro habit of putting everything there, the less you have to stay in your mind, the less you have to be in to-do mode or productivity mode, and the more you get to be in soft mode. Okay, so this next habit is teeny tiny and a little funny, and it's just simply not running up to the door first. And what I mean by this is, let's say that you go to a restaurant with your date. Don't go running up to that door first, okay? Because what you're doing is you're taking away the opportunity for him to open it for you. Or you're living somewhere and getting in the car together. Don't go racing up to that car door. Let him just slightly sorta lead the way, sorta get there first, so that he again has that opportunity to open the door for you. He might take it, he might not, but at least you're giving him the opportunity. Or you're walking into a store and you realize that you are approaching the door at about the same time as some random guy that's coming up to that door. I know this is so little and such a micro thing, but like, slow down just a tad. Let him get there just a tiny bit first so that he can open the door for you. He most likely will. I know this is little, but what feminine woman doesn't like the door being open for them? It makes us feel good. It makes us feel cherished. And this at least allows the opportunity for that to happen. There have been multiple times where I have been walking up to the door or a car door with my husband, and for some reason, like, I am just kind of racing him there. Like, not actually, but I'm walking real fast. And my husband had to be like, "Hey Jilly, hey Jillz, wait a second." And I would turn around and be like, "What?" And then he'll just like smile and open the door for me. And I'll be like, "Oh, thank you." He kind of had to teach me to slow down. But if I am racing him to the door, then he can't do that for me. So slow down to the door, allow for a teeny tiny pause when you're at the door, and give him that opportunity, allow him the opportunity to open it for you. And that leads me into my next point. The next micro habit is just slowing down. Slowing down while you're walking, slowing down while you're cooking, slowing down while you're doing your skincare routine before bed. Stop rushing and start being present. To be in your feminine energy, you can't be rushing all the time because it just goes against what the feminine energy is. If you're rushing, you can't hear your intuition. If you're rushing, you can't access your creativity. If you're rushing, you're not being present. If you're rushing, you're not connected to your body. The constant rushing pulls you out of your feminine energy. So therefore, to increase your feminine energy, start slowing down just a little bit, just sometimes. You don't have to be super slow. You don't have to be a turtle, just sometimes. Just this little tiny habit of doing some things a little bit slower sometimes, you will notice it will start to relax your body. It will start to relax your nervous system. It'll start to soften you and it'll feel really good. Now let's move on to the next micro habit, which is letting things be a 95. And let me explain what I mean by this. Everything that you do does not always need to be done and completed at 100%, meaning that everything that has to get done doesn't always have to be 100% perfect. Sometimes they can just be a 95. Trying to do everything to 100% perfection is a way that you will be totally exhausted and burnt out from life, and it'll zap the fun out of everything. It doesn't matter how much you love writing, if every time you write you think it has to be the best thing you've ever written, it's gonna take the fun out of it. It doesn't matter how much you love painting, if every time you paint you think it has to be a masterpiece, it's gonna take the fun out of it. It doesn't matter how much you love Pilates, if every time you go to a Pilates class you feel like you have to be the best in the class, it's gonna take the fun out of it. I don't think my YouTube videos are 100%. I mean, I try my best, but I don't think they're a 100. But if I told myself that these things had to be absolutely perfect before I posted them, I guarantee you there would be very little videos here on my channel. And it would turn something I love into something that stresses me out to the max. Just the teeny tiny micro shift of when you're doing something, ask yourself, does this have to be a 100? Or can this be a 95? Some things might need to be a 100, but you'll realize that most things can just be a 95. The more you stress about all the things that you're doing, the more that you're gonna get taken out of your feminine energy. Let yourself be okay with not everything being 100% perfect all the time. And I guarantee you that nobody is really gonna notice anyways. Now, the next micro habit I wanna talk about is the power of buying tiny little treats for yourself sometimes. I used to be very resistant to spending like any money on myself at all, or at least as little as I could. And I will say, like, I did save a lot, but I also realized that me not spending any money on myself or spending any money to do anything fun was kind of telling myself that I wasn't worthy of those things, that I wasn't worthy of that amount, and that my pleasure was absolutely unimportant. For me, increasing my feminine energy meant intentionally doing more fun and pleasurable things in my life, like I talked about before. But one thing that was super small but also very impactful was just buying myself little treats here and there sometimes. And I'm not talking about like $100 items or anything like that. I'm talking about like a $4 cup of peppermint tea just because it's a cold day and that sounds cozy. Or some new nail polish because it's a cute color, or taking myself out to get a smoothie and go on a walk outside. Like initially I would see those things as a waste, like, oh, I don't need the tea, I could just have water. I don't need another nail polish, I already have like 10 of them. But it's not really about that. It's about seeing the value in making myself happy and the value in treating myself. Now, of course, you could obviously take this too far and just say treat yourself to anything and everything and just like go into wild debt. Obviously, that's not what I'm talking about. Of course, there is a balance here. What I'm talking about is just like those little tiny micro treats, those little things every once in a while, because it makes us happy and it's a reminder that we are meant to feel joy. Now, you can obviously treat yourself in larger ways too. I'm not opposed to that. You can buy yourself nice things if you feel like you are, that's a good financial thing for you. I'm a big fan of investing in myself, whether it's education or just up-leveling my life in any sort of way. Maybe it's even like up-leveling your wardrobe to create that next level version of yourself. All of those things can be very beneficial, but that's just not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about those micro moments, getting that book at the bookstore that you can't seem to put down, buying yourself fresh flowers at the grocery store. Those things can also be incredibly meaningful and can really shift the way that you feel. The feminine loves to feel cherished. They love to feel loved and cherished and taken care of. And this is just a tiny little micro way to do that for yourself. The next small habit to start increasing your feminine energy is to actually start scheduling your me time into your calendar. A lot of times our calendars are just kind of used for more boring things, like that dentist appointment or that important work deadline, or they're usually related to like more work-related things or task-related things. Maybe there's like the occasional fun dinner restaurant or vacation on there, but that's it. But actually putting in that me time or that fun time or that self-care time, whatever it is, into your calendar, it is a tiny little extra step to make sure that your life doesn't just become one big blur of to-dos. It'll make sure that you're still prioritizing yourself. If you really want to, for example, have an extended evening routine once a week and take a luxurious bath, put it on your calendar every Wednesday night from 7:30 to 9 p.m. That's what you're gonna do. If you wanna go for a long walk at your favorite park every Sunday morning, put it on your calendar. If it's really important for you to take your dog to the dog park twice a week, put it in your calendar. If you want to take yourself out on a solo date once a month, at the beginning of every month, figure out when are you gonna do it? What are you gonna do? put it in your calendar. The reason why I think this is so important is because 1, if you put it in your calendar, you're more likely to do it. 2, you're more likely to actually create that space for it and make sure that other things don't take up that me time. And 3, it kind of teaches us subconsciously that our me time or our fun time is important too. And I usually have like my me time on my calendar in like a happy fun color like pink or yellow. Just a tiny little thing, takes very little effort, but once you start doing this, you realize that your life will start to become more enjoyable. And the feminine needs that me time to feel our best, like we just do. That is it. Let me know what you thought of these little micro habits, or if you have any micro habits that you want to share that help you feel more embodied in your feminine energy, then share them in the comments below. Now, if you like this topic of micro habits, I also have another video called 12 micro habits that actually improved my life. This is kind of more micro habits that are just more general for life. But if you like this video, then I think you'll also like that one too. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you over there, or I will just see you next time. Bye.